So, welcome everyone to today's episode of Inflow TV. My special guest, Sandra Lo of Zoho. That rhyme. I might start rapping on these, Sandy. So now Sandy's the head of corporate communications for Zoho, and there's a lot, I guess, involved in that title. We'll let her tell us more about that in a bit, but welcome, Sandy.
Hey, good to talk to you. It's like talking to an old friend, but on a live format. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for coming. Now, Sandy, last time I saw you in person, I think it was at the Zoho Day in Austin, right? And that's around the end of January?
Right? End of January, although it seems like 3 years ago, the way 2020 has been.
Yeah, because our whole world has like changed since then, right? Like in less than 2 months after that, we were in shelter in place here in the Bay Area. And funny, I remember those early days sort of like marveling at how eerily quiet the streets were. I was walking downtown. It was just like, whoa, where is everybody, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah.
So, Sandy, to kick us off, can you just tell us a little bit about your role at Zoho for one, and also a little bit about what Zoho does actually, or what Zoho's about?
No, happy to. So as Dave said, I am the global head of corporate communications at Zoho. So what that means is, I help manage media relations, PR, analyst relations, and customer advocacy. And when there's a time of need, crisis communication as well. But we don't want that to happen too often. And, I work for Zoho, and Zoho, we are almost 25 years old, believe it or not. And we have been bootstrapped and profitable from day one, never take any outside money, want to, stay true to our customers' best interests and the employees. And, we are a technology company that builds over 45 different apps to serve all types of business needs from front to back office and everything in between.
Awesome. So now, being in charge of, core comms, right? You have sort of all these different parts that make up like what you do, like, from PR, AR, inflow relations, how has it been sort of navigating, being a PR, AR, and comms pro, from those pre-pandemic stages, early stages of the pandemic till now? If you can sort of take us through those stages.
Yeah, certainly. I think that, for any corporate communications professional, our job's always been, what is the perception of our brand out there to all of these stakeholders you just listed, right? And, that very quickly shifted, the minute the pandemic became the pandemic that is impacting everyone's lives. And, it very much went from, not what the media wants to hear about you, or not what the analyst wants to hear about you, or how to get this and that type of coverage. It very much shifted to how do we help our customers? How do we help them survive? And that's how I found my role change instantly in March, from this external communications role to very much about, how do I better serve our customers, and how do Zoho updates get better communicated to our customers directly to help them take advantage of what we're offering.
Awesome. And so one of the things that's sort of been clear to me during this whole, pandemic has been sort of this refocus on people. So a lot of companies reaching out with empathy, to the community. And one of the things I love about Zoho leadership has sort of been the serious focus on, people over profit, right? And so how is it been being a mom and sort of having to balance, that work, during this pandemic?
I think that the good thing is I never felt that I had to choose between work or being a mom now, and I think that speaks very, highly for the Zoho genuine culture, where it never was an issue. I think that once everything happened in early March, we were all very much encouraged to, take care of your family, take care of what you need, take care of the transition. And that was never, questioned. So, for me, there's obviously other challenges, balancing motherhood and being a professional that works full time. But, it was very much, you do what you need to do for all the employees to make the right decision based on your family first and foremost.
Yeah. And so I guess it was the Zoho culture sort of made that more of a seamless transition for you, because I know, like, for instance, for me, I've been remote, for like a lot of my career, so even with you, I know you were some in office, some remote, but so the culture itself sort of made more of an easy transition for you during the pandemic.
Yes, definitely. And I think, we have our own applications. So I think that, we didn't need that ramp up time to purchase a new technology. I think everything sort of remained the same. The communications channels across different regional teams remained the same. And, when it came down to it, it was not even a technology issue. It's more just from the leadership team knowing that, they care about our well-being, our personal lives more during this very difficult time versus, wow, are you going to be productive for me, within X amount of days? So that was never an issue that I hope any of us felt.
But and that's so key. I think one of the things, again, like I mentioned before, that we're seeing is that people are becoming more and more, again, recognized more and more important and centered to the organization. I remember, years ago, I was at this HR tech conference. I'm sure you were there actually at the time.
Yes.
and I remember this guy gets on stage, right? And he goes, it's time we bring the human back into HR. And I'm like, they never left, dude. I get what he's trying to say, but it was like, it's all about the people, it's all about humans. And so I love the whole notion of, people over profit, really catering, focusing on the people and how they're actually doing, right? And make sure that their lives are balanced, especially during a time like this.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the lessons I very quickly learned as a Zoho employee was that, your relationship with each other, it's not about metrics, it's not about achievements. There's a lot of things, possibly more important things like trust that you cannot measure, and that will actually have a longer term benefit than, let's say, we achieved X percent within X days, so that was a different way of thinking for me, and one that I have absolutely bought into and tried to really emulate in how I interact with my team and also my peers. So it's great. Very much a human first culture for sure.
Exactly. Time to put the human back in HR.
Yes.
So in terms of Zoho, what are some of the tools or solutions that Zoho is providing that supports, remote work now that we need it even more so than ever, and workplace collaboration and productivity? And you can sort of take them, one at a time if you want to.
Yeah, certainly. Well, I think early March, we were one of the very first companies that rolled out something called Zoho remotely. And that is also a remote work platform that, that was free and available to any company to use. And that was, phase when a lot of small business in particular and some mid-sized businesses were wondering, gosh, can I do this? Can I do that? And so this is one of the very first platforms, and that is actually still free until December 1st for anyone who was making this transformation announcement, transition. So so that's certainly one. And then, as you probably, you're aware of, Zoho Workplace, is our collaboration productivity suite that we rolled out just a month ago. It's not new, but certainly has been updated to support the recent times. And, so that's certainly another option. And then there's one thing that I think very few people know about is what we have been doing to support schools that are, that have to tackle remote learning, in a very short period of time. There's an app called Zoho Classes that we have put out there, and it's free for all schools to use. And actually, in fact, many schools in India are using Zoho Classes. That's also available for, for everyone to adjust to this new virtual environment that we are all a part of now.
Yeah. And is some of the, I guess, the community stuff that you guys are doing, is that part of the Zoho Cares stuff?
Yes. So you're referring to the some of the relief programs that we have out there?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So many phases of different relief programs we have done. I think, our ESAP program, it stands for Emergency Subscription Assistance Program, I think. Look at all these acronyms, seriously. I can start rapping now too, right? So ESAP.
Coming from Gartner, I've contributed to a lot of alphabet soup in my life, so I go for it. Yes.
So ESAP is, was out there for any and all small businesses who feel like they can use the relief from not paying, a Zoho subscription. These are for existing customers who felt like they were hurting during those very critical months of survival, especially back in April, May, and June, where things were still extremely, bleak,
Yeah.
I think, so that was taken advantage by, more than 10,000, 15,000 different businesses. And
Yeah.
so that was a very successful program. And then we had, we also have an app building program, for nonprofits, government entities, anyone who needed the app building expertise,
Hmm.
to help citizens as soon as possible. And then there are quite a few. I would say at least 10 or 12 of our different, products were being offered for free, to help the back office and the front
Yeah.
office, and then to help communicate with our customers. And then I think more recently, the back to work application that we have to help
Hmm.
some businesses who are ready to safely, invite employees back to work and, be,
Yeah.
in a physical location. So that was another, program that we had. But, it seemed like it's been many years. 2020 seems like it's been many years on its own. But I think,
Exactly.
I
Exactly.
love that. I love that, our company have been very much in the forefront in terms of thinking of what's next and how to
Yeah.
help a customer through this entire phase, from the first day of pandemic to how they can safely, reopen their business and thrive again.
Yeah, exactly. I think you mentioned the apps of Zoho and all things all things that you guys are doing. So many different solutions. I think you guys have sort of catered a lot to remote work. For some time now, right? And we're seeing where the workplace trends. Obviously, now everyone's remote, but we do. I guess we'll see probably more of a hybrid approach. In a year's time or so, as things maybe get back to normal. They never were normal, and maybe normal wasn't even that good. So right, right. But I definitely see things getting more back to some sort of a hybrid model, of some in office and some remote work.
I definitely agree. I think the conversation has already been shifting, right? From,
Mhm.
do we even need the office or not, to I think right now and maybe beyond, maybe in 2021, it's going to be
Yeah.
much more about context and
Mhm.
not losing that context. And I feel that, at least, using Zoho solutions myself daily, that are, because everything is built on the same platform, the context is there with me from app to app, from page to page,
Yeah.
from team discussions to another team discussion. So, I think, that context people will increasingly find more critical as they're in a hybrid environment, to not be
Yeah.
so dependent on that physical presence.
Yeah. And so, one of the terms I know we've talked about offline before, is the so constant future of work, right? So, in line with what we're talking about now, I've always said the future of work is now. Right? This is now, especially with this pandemic. Everything is happening right now. You have to be sort of very present, right? Everything is right now. So, where do you think we go from here if you had to sort of take a crystal ball out a little bit?
Future of work is, it's certainly the present, like you said. But I think the future of work is choice. The future of
Yeah.
work is choice. And like I said earlier, context. It is about outcome. It's no longer about, definition of set hours or set location
Hmm.
and set teams. It's very much about, fluidity as well. So,
Yeah.
without getting into specifics, that's how I view the future of work. And I think it's a better future. I think,
Yeah.
if anything, the silver lining from the pandemic is, what? We can develop much better work environments that really
Absolutely.
suit
Yeah.
individual, lifestyles too. And I think I learned this term from you, the whole employee, embracing the whole employee
Yeah.
lifestyle and work preferences versus being so defined, like it has
Yeah.
been traditionally.
Yeah, because I mean, like you're saying, our worlds have merged, right? The
Absolutely.
me that would get up, and go to the office for that 9 a.m. meeting, and before that, I was dropping the kids off at school or what have you. It's the same me now at home, having to deal with distance learning to make sure, my little guy is on that Zoom,
Mhm.
right? So our worlds have merged, and it's like companies, I think, is starting to realize or should be realizing that that same person needs to be taken care of. And
Yes,
so you're right. The future of
absolutely.
work is choice, but it's really about it's people. And so how do you sort
Hmm.
of, center and focus on making sure that your people are okay because they're your currency for the most part.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I applaud that. I love that. Very well said, Dave.
So, you and I always talk about, like a lot of different things, topics. So what are your personal thoughts, from like a PR pro perspective we've been dealing, with this pandemic. We've been dealing with social issues, diversity, inclusion, inequities. I'd love to get some of your personal thoughts on those issues, from a PR pro perspective, as well as just, being Sandy.
Yes, yes. Well, okay. Representing both. So I have to be professional then, right? No, I think one of the most important thing is staying true to yourself, even when you are in the work capacity. I think that one of my pet peeves, honestly, is, when I, see, these diversity panels, these inclusion panels, and, you sort of have, one person speaking, and it doesn't quite represent the company's value from there on. I think that companies, and many do, but companies need to put their, they need to act the way they talk. They need to walk the walk, walk the talk, walk the walk, both. But
exactly.
I think that, as PR professionals, we have the responsibility to actually call that out, because we often are the intermediaries, between those, the media, of course, and, our internal leadership, and also, just whoever, like analyst events and the analysts, so we are that intermediary. And, when we see something like that, it's, we have the responsibility to certainly call that out and, make sure it doesn't go unnoticed and unaddressed. I think that it's no longer good enough to talk about diversity, equality, and inclusion. You need to do so much more than just talk about it. We're past the talking about a stage. And I just, sometimes I just cringe, to be honest, at some of those panels.
No, I tell you, I mean, I see them, and it's, we got, with the whole George Floyd incident and everything that's happening, the pandemic, we a lot of us have, sort of joked that there's sort of, not joke, but there are two pandemics, right? There is the public health pandemic, with COVID, and then what's happening just this whole summer with, with George Floyd, and just expose all the racial and social injustice and inequities that prevail in society. And, we saw all the Black Lives Matter statements, from different corporations, so forth, and those were good. But to your point, it's like, where does the action then meet, those statements, right?
Absolutely. And that's, I will encourage influencers like you, media, anyone that has an audience, to really hold companies accountable. And, and PR professionals like me, it's up to us as well, to not just participate, for show, but actually ask yourself, is my company doing this? Are we putting everything that we can do in, are we making the right investment to make sure that, we actually see results, around DEI? So.
No, yeah, absolutely. Because I think, it, and what you're saying is something that I've been sort of, feeling for a while, was like, we need to move beyond, diversity, inclusion, numbers, and have and support, facilitate that culture, that enables that, right? Forget the numbers. Where's the culture that enables that? So.
Absolutely.
And that starts, from the top, bottom, all sides.
Yeah. So there needs to be that top down, but also from the root of the problem, like the bottom up approach too. And, and that is something that, at least for me, I feel that Zoho is taking a different approach to ensuring that type of, equal opportunity by going into, villages or older towns that are not, as that aren't, full of different opportunities and educational training opportunities, and actually going in there to make a difference within. And from doing that, then you actually increase that, talent pipeline, and providing, tech leadership opportunities for people who otherwise wouldn't have it, because, they're, living in a town that is 2 or 3 hours away from, a large city where most of the jobs are. But, we are trying to build that infrastructure for some of these rural towns or older, villages that otherwise do not have access to these type of, privileged training, I like to call it.
No, yeah, and it's funny, and that's one of the things I've also liked about Zoho Leadership as well too. Even on sort of the recruiting and the hiring side, where it's not just about someone's degree, or
Hmm.
whether they're from MIT, Harvard, or whatever. It's what can they bring, and then we can also teach them, right? And
Hmm.
so there is a sort
Hmm.
of a teaching culture as well too, which I've always found very impressive.
Yeah, it's very much about mentorship. It's very
Yeah.
much about learning on the job,
Yeah.
and finding your craft. That's a term that we use, and I
Yeah.
love that because you may be hired for a different reason, but it's up to the company to also make sure that we find what drives you, what you love, and
Mhm.
what your craft is to be successful. So it goes two
Yeah.
ways. You're not hiring an employee, an asset to
Yeah.
just perform for you. It has to go both ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, yeah, we talked about sort of some of your thoughts on dealing with social issues and stuff like that. I would love to hear your unique perspective, though, as Sandy being a woman and minority as well.
You mean at Zoho or just in general throughout the career?
In general, yeah.
In general, well, I've learned many lessons now that I'm at my old age.
Not a
I,
day over 14.
oh yeah, okay. But I think that someone told me long ago that the thing is, being a female, being a minority,
Mhm.
people sometimes choose not to hear you. Not
Mhm.
because you aren't smart or you aren't qualified
Yeah.
or what you're saying, doesn't make sense. It's because they choose not to hear you because of who you are.
Yeah.
And so the advice I got and the advice that I find myself giving is that, what, speak louder 10 times and more than you're
Mhm.
comfortable with. And this is
Yeah.
for the younger me, I guess, 10 times more than you're comfortable with, because
Mhm.
instinctively you should know that you are right. And if
Yeah.
others choose not to hear you, then help them hear you and make them hear you. So and
Yeah.
that's something that I definitely encountered throughout my career, and even in
Yeah.
in recent years, is that you know um, you have to really find your way in. Or
Mhm.
people like to say a seat at the table, but it just, for a minority female,
Mhm.
you have to work extra hard. You have to talk even louder,
Yeah.
because what you say certainly is valuable, but
Absolutely.
making people hear you is another story. And this is
Yeah.
something that we all have to work hard at. Another thing that I would say is, when you have fought that fight and reach a certain you know level where you can influence others, when
Yeah.
when you get to the place where people actually choose to hear you, empower others, help
Yeah.
make others be heard as well. And I
Absolutely.
think that is so important for me, is that and that's what ties back to what I don't like about some of these diversity panels is, okay, so you've made it, but how does that change day to day in opportunities for anyone else, for
Yeah.
everyone else?
Yeah.
So that's what I would certainly encourage people to do as well, is trust your instinct. It.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
if people don't hear you, still trust your instinct and make them hear you. And
Yeah.
I think that 30 something or late 20s Sandy, really you know really appreciated that feedback, and it sort of guided me
Yeah.
throughout the career. And yeah, and then there's of course an educational factor too.
Mhm.
Like I said, stay true to yourself, call people out when
Mm.
something isn't right, and have that
Yeah.
uncomfortable discussion, because it's uncomfortable for you, uncomfortable for them, but the only way to foster some type of understanding is
Yeah.
to make sure that conversation happens, and that'll help so many others after you.
That's a good point, to just call it out. And it's not sort of trying to make it a comment. It's just that sometimes you just have to call out, nonsense, and establish yourself as, hey, it's funny. Recently in this year during the pandemic, even myself, I've realized that I need to just present my whole stuff. Right? We talk about the whole employee. It's how do
Yes.
you present your whole self, right? And so we've all talking. We're both fans of '90s hip hop, right? And right, and so, but for so long in my career, I never really talked a lot about that stuff or hip hop at work. because I always felt like kind of like, if I bring my whole self hip hop, they're gonna think I'm a hoodlum. But all those thoughts, coming up as a young Black man, like was in my head, even in professional circles. It's just up until recently realizing, hey, bring your whole self, be your whole self wherever you are, at work, wherever you are.
Absolutely, I agree.
Awesome. Thank you, Sandy. Thank you so much for joining me today. This has been a fun discussion.
Yeah, no, we talk about all types of things. So this is it's good. It's good to share some of these perspectives, publicly. But you're one of my go-tos for some of these situations. So
awesome. Thanks so much, Sandy. And thanks everyone for joining us today, and tune in for the next episode. Thanks again, Sandy.
Thank you, Dan.